Every movie is a time-traveling capsule containing its director's intention and the essence of the history of its time. In this comparative analysis, I will compare the use of montage in demonstrating the image of the rebellious youth and how they convey the existential problems sparked from different political ideologies in two different coming-of-age movies, Daisies, directed by Věra Chytilová, and Rushmore, directed by Wes Anderson. The opening scene of the Czech movie Daisies shows two teenage girls named Marie 1 and Marie 2 sunbathing while having an absurd conversation, which is the only tying string for the rest of the movie.
Víš co? Když se všechno kazí, tak budeme kažené i my. Správně vadí.
The chaotic yet playful nature of the two girls is expressed with them toying with rich men, eating and cooking on their bed, and having a food fight inside an elegant dining hall. Banned by the Czech Communist state 2 years after its premiere, the movie is anything but preaching political ideas. Its nihilistic and anarchic lens creates the perfect atmosphere for experimental thoughts, which fit perfectly into the framework of the Czech New Wave movement, so much so that one may find the movie uncomfortable to watch. Bittersweet and thought-provoking summarize my impression of the movie. In Rushmore, the politically influenced philosophy of how to live and dream drives the story of a teenage boy named Max Fisher, who received a scholarship at the prestigious Rushmore Academy, a private school in Houston, for his talented script writing skill. He excels in extracurriculars, yet fails academically. This is when his friendship with Herman Bloom, a successful industrialist, develops and heightens when both Bloom and Max fall in love with an elementary teacher at Rushmore, Miss Cross. The love triangle develops further into the theme of competition, uncertainty, and the search for compassion, the result of the American democratic and capitalist spirit. The word montage came to identify specifically the rapid shot cutting that Eisenstein employed in his film. Its use survives to this day in the specifically created montage sequences inserted into Hollywood films to suggest, in a blur of double exposures, the rise of fame of an opera singer, or in brief model shots, the destruction of an airplane, a city, or a planet. Traditionally, montage is used as a unique editing style that compiles different shots and sequences together in order to create suspense and mood or to give in-depth information to the scene. Pungent and sometimes suffocating, Daisies and Rushmore focus on visual storytelling using this technique, though with completely opposite intentions in mind. Dr. Lim, a professor of film and media studies at UCI, stated in her article on Camera Obscura, a publication by Duke University Press. Daisie's surrealist motifs of montage and collage are epitomized in striking images of the heroines' bodies splintered and recomposed. These formal strategies suggest an appropriation of surrealist tenets, incongruity and surprise, the denial of mimetic representation, and the revelatory power of fragmentation by a Czech feminist filmmaker. 2 years after the movie was released, an event called the Prague Spring happened. It was an attempt to decentralize the economy and democratize Czechoslovakia, with mass protests against the communist state after World War II. The rising spirit of rebellion and destruction leading up to this event was embedded inside Daisies. The movie does not follow one central narrative. The montage switches from images of war and bombing to two little girls flirting with rich men to images of them eating apples and burning down the bedroom. There is no one meaning behind the series of shots but a variety of interpretations, whether it's a criticism of being stupidly rebellious or a reminder to break the conventions and not let our playfulness die in a suppressed regime. Their creativity and destructiveness are two sides of the same coin, Ms. Chytilová said in an interview during the 2002 Prague Film Festival in London. Living in a country that put on strict restrictions for the media, Věra Chytilová could not be straightforward with her visual storytelling. Like segments of memories, the montage style of the movie allowed the audience to feel the urge to think about freedom, a way of psychologically suggesting revolutionary ideas into the mind of the audience subtly. The youthful energy of the two Marie awakens the new generation of Czechoslovakia. Chytilova herself explained to Kate Connolly back in 2000, "If there is something you don't like, don't keep to the rules, break them. I'm an enemy of stupidity and simple-mindedness in both men and women, and I have rid my living space of these traits." And to quote Alejandro Jodorowsky, a French filmmaker who lived through World War II and grew up in the middle of the French New Wave movement, which influenced the later Czech film industry, "Birds born in a cage think flying is an illness." Chytilova ended the movie with, "This film is dedicated to those who get upset only over a stomped-upon bed of lettuce." Perhaps Chytilova wanted to remind the contemporary Czechoslovak society to not be birds in a cage, criticizing the two actors while not realizing the threat to collective freedom. Robert Yeoman, the cinematographer of every single Wes Anderson's films, said in his interview with Vulture, "Wes was so adamant about having it, so whenever we were on a location we knew we could use for the montage, we would grab the shot right there. I think he was afraid the studio was not gonna let him get it. It incorporates a lot of things that Wes grew up with and loved." Quick and informative, Anderson uses montage to establish the background of the character Max while setting the tone for his uniquely styled movie. This editing style allows Anderson to manipulate his precious screen time and be as productive as possible. In just 1 minute, Max Fisher comes across the audience as a high achiever, the controller of the group, the authority figure who represents the students at his school. Max cares, perhaps even too much, putting his time and effort into so many executive roles for extracurriculars. The mise-en-scène suggests Max to get along well with his fellow schoolmates, embodying the characteristic of a democratic leader, fairness among individuals, and a representative who connects all members to finalize a decision. Rushmore is Wes Anderson's semi-autobiographical feature. Growing up in America, a country that emphasizes individuality and civil freedom, Anderson has a chance to express himself and his take on life via movies. There is no oppressed regime, but that doesn't mean there is no criticism to this system. The opening montage represents the glamour of democracy, when deep down inside, as we see later on in the movie, there is a crave for community and connections. Max is a tryhard because he wants validation. One must be self-made, subject to consumerism, and be a leader. But even then, as shown in the case of Herman Bloom, one cannot separate himself from companionship and emotional satisfaction. The insecurities for not being a successful person, not having a rich dad, and not controlling the group drive Max's purpose to be a great writer, since those traits are praised in American society. Max is trapped in Rushmore, the market in which he is the larger fish in the pond, figuratively and literally. Whether one's a teenager like Max Fisher or a grown-up like Mr. Bloom, it makes no difference the failure to realize what one presents outside to the world is as important as how one feels inside his own world. Given birth by two different political systems, Daisies and Rushmore show how complex the layers of value films can contain. Communism or democracy, the questions remain humanly across time and place. Free from conformity or moral connection, how should one live happily?